everyone to our Pharma Forum interview series. I'm Lily Nagy, and today I'm thrilled to be speaking with Jackie Foust, Senior Manager of Medical Affairs, Meetings, and Events at Gilead. Jackie, thank you for joining us. So let's just dive right in. For those who haven't had the chance to meet you yet, could you tell us a little bit about your career journey and what brought you to your current role in the life sciences industry?
Of course. And thank you for having me, by the way. So I always joke that I have the most obvious career trajectory ever, which is I found out I had celiac when I was like 20 and couldn't go to culinary school any longer. So I went into politics and then I got burnt out on politics and then made the next natural progression into events. So it's a very clear path that I always like to joke about, not at all. My first event was a Pride event in Sacramento, God, quite a few years ago now. And then I kind of led over to an agency that worked with my company now, Gilead, with the HIV space. So it was a natural progression for me. And then I came to Gilead early 2020. So I was one of the planners who survived the pandemic. I was very fortunate to be able to come in-house. One of my best friends who's at a different company now, I got to be her maternity leave, and then I just never left. So that is how I got into Gilead. When I started, I was a contractor, so it was like a very different role. And now I've had many promotions over the many years and have kind of worked myself up to this position. Historically, I've worked mainly on like ad boards and that type of programs. This last year, I've been really kind of building out where my team sits in medical, kind of our presence at conferences. So different sides. My team does sit like medically, so I'm fortunate enough to work with the researchers and the scientists and all the doctors who I adore. And yeah, kind of working in that space. And now we're just looking at how do we have a different presence at some of the conferences that we weren't attending previously.
Mhm. Excellent. So thank you so much for sharing. So it's fascinating to hear how those professionals find their way into the space. So since you've been in the space for a while, in your opinion, what are the biggest challenges currently facing life science meetings and events, and how do you envision these challenges evolving in the near future?
It's funny because 2 years ago at or at Pharma Forum, you guys had a session on AI, and somebody said in that session, you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by people who know how to use AI. And I
Mhm.
actually think that's probably one of our biggest solutions right now. At the same time, it's also probably one of our biggest problems, right? It is an amazing tool, and it's able to help us in various ways, but how can we do that? How can we do that compliantly as well?
Mhm.
So compared to a lot of other industries, we can't just jump into, any chat GPT or any of that because there is a lot of concerns with our intellectual property. So how do we use it safely and how do we use it right? We also have data of our advisors, of patients that we need to be very, very aware of how we, use that and where it ends up. So I think that is one of our biggest issues because how can we do this? How can we do it compliantly? How can we ensure that it's using it for the right tools? And then, yeah, how do we even use it? Are we checking databases against each other? Are we using it to, check flights and arrival times? And there's so many different things that I think we can utilize now that I am a millennial, so there's a lot of people younger than me that probably know these tools better already. I am struggling to be like, how do I learn it? How do I use it? How do I write these prompts? So that's probably one of the biggest ones. I think the ever-changing compliance guidelines, obviously, that's something that we're all trying to stay up with. Maybe AI can solve that as well. And then I think budget has been a big kind of conversation. We went from doing virtual programs, and there was this is cheap, this is great. Why don't we do this forever? And then people were like, there's a value of being in person.
Mhm.
So I think as we've gone back more into person events, budget was a really big concern on how do we do this? How do we do it right? How are we not wasting money? And then the hotels had like a very big challenge of they needed to do renovations after pandemic and costs had changed. We needed to do cleanliness is completely different thing. So I think the whole industry of looking at how we approach budgets has changed. And then I would like probably say there's like politics that we are also challenging, right? I've had
Mhm.
people not want to travel to certain regions or countries because of political climates in that country or this country, even the US. So I think that's something that we're also constantly having to be concerned of how our folks really kind of seeing how they're traveling and the value within that, because there
Mhm.
is such an impact of having in-person meetings.
Yeah. And speaking of in-person meetings, Pharma Forum is regarded as one of the leading events in the industry. So what, in your view, makes it such a distinctive and valuable experience for professionals working in the field?
I think there's a lot of things that you could probably just say that are bullet points that are great about it. And there's like, it's probably a laundry list you've heard many times. I will say that this last year, we decided to kind of go to an RFP in a couple different places, or an RFI, excuse me. And the contacts that I had made at Pharma Forum, and knowing that they had spoken knowledgeably at the event, they had, really shown a presence and like made an effort to get to know folks, like those contacts were invaluable to me. And it's one of those things where it wasn't day to day that I necessarily relied on it. But it was so valuable when I needed it. And it was really the only way I had like a very large database. I even went back to the Pharma Forum website from last year and I was like, oh, I remember I talked to that person and that person. And it was so critical. So there's that piece, which is like just been really present in my mind all year. But
Mhm.
obviously the value, I just, quoted something from Pharma Forum 2 years ago, right? Like the content that happens there, hearing what everybody else is dealing with, understanding how hotels are approaching things, how agencies are approaching things, seeing even the agenda, right? Knowing what is trending in the industry, all of that is just really, really helpful. So just kind of keeping on top of it and just, that shared insights.
Yeah, for sure. And with the life sciences industry going through all of these rapid changes, what other advice would you offer to meeting professionals that are looking to stay ahead of trends and adapt effectively in this fast-paced environment?
I think diversify, right? Like,
Hmm.
your connections, your knowledge base, the tools that you are using. It's staying on top of technology is probably one of the biggest things right now. We are utilizing smart sheets in a lot of new ways right now. We are using a lot of different AI tools. So there's so many different things. Even we have a Presentium license, and I don't know if other people have that, but it helps you build slides, and I love that one, right? Like staying on top of those tools that make our what our expertise is more valuable, right? Like
Hmm.
I a lot of people can check in Excel, right? That's great. That is a big part of my job, but it can be a less part of my job if I have the right tools. And then my expertise and my knowledge on compliance of, what hotels to use, of each city, of each market, and then the needs of my advisors. That's the expertise that cannot be replicated by technology. And that's really where my value is, right? So as long as you are really trying to diversify what you are capable of doing and the knowledge that you're bringing in, I think that's probably the most helpful thing to kind of stay on top of everything that's happening.
For sure. And speaking of the knowledge that you're bringing in, you'll be speaking on the session Navigating Global Program Complexities, Strategy and Implementation. So, can you give us a little sneak peek of the key takeaways attendees can expect from your presentation?
I feel like none of this will be surprising with everything I've already talked about. Yeah, technology is key, right?
Mhm.
So there is so much information out there and it is an information overload, right? So how can I ensure that one, the systems that I'm using are accurate, correct, up to date, and then they have some governance over them. It's great to create a process, but if no one's ensuring that process or that system is happening, let's stay on top of that. So the strategies that we are coming up with right now are really looking forward. And that's what we really need to be considering as we are trying to stay on these complex programs. We were doing programs that are in partnership with other pharma agencies. How do we ensure that we're all being valued, we're all getting the inputs that we need? So, I think there's a lot of information out there, a lot of like technology, and we're just going to have to try and like kind of stay on top of it, be consistent, and then fostering collaboration. I think that's the hardest like part nowadays is it's very easy to get caught up in our little worlds as event planners, but we have to
Mhm.
work with our agency partners, we have to work with our internal partners. So just making sure that we're having the right information, having the right systems, and then able to implement it properly.
Yeah, for sure. I'm super looking forward to the session. Very excited. So, thank you again for joining me today. And thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Pharma Forum interview series. So, stay connected with us for more conversations with industry leaders shaping the future of life science meetings and events. For updates and registration details, visit pharmameetingplanners.com and follow us on LinkedIn. So, see you at Pharma Forum US.